Welcome to Interactive Storytelling. Last time we reviewed the narrative paradox, which refers to the incompatibility of the interactor's freedom of choice and the designer's premeditated narration. The author-centric approach emerged in the early 1990s, and it was the first attempt to try to solve the narrative paradox. Following the ideas of Brenda Laurel, it sees interactive storytelling resembling theatre, where an author writes a play and a director guides a group of actors to follow it. Let's take an example how this model could be adapted to the needs of interactive storytelling. This example is based on an early test scenario devised by the Oz project. This scenario doesn't include any computers, but a human test subject, the interactor, who gets on the stage with a group of human actors. The actors have headphones for receiving instructions from an off-stage human drama manager. The given instructions affect how the actors should play, but otherwise they are free to improvise their dialogue and actions. The drama manager has a script describing the overall structure and order of events. By observing the reactions of the test subject, the drama manager modifies the situation so that it would follow the script. One of the staged experiments took place in the set of a bus station with 3 actors: a clerk, a blind passenger, and a punk. The interactor's task in this scenario is to buy a bus ticket to a relative's funeral. While the interactor is waiting for their turn, the punk takes out a knife and tries to rob the clerk. As the events unfold, the script and the drama manager following it develops the situation so that there's a turning point where the clerk manages to give the interactor a gun without the punk noticing. The human interactor's reactions varied much in this experiment. Some took quickly the initiative and acted out their role. For others, the experience was too much and the test had to be interrupted. Nevertheless, the interactors were all highly engaged in the drama. This author-centric approach was then adapted into computerized platforms, where the computer would take the role of the characters and the drama manager, and also provide a presentation and user interface to the interactor. In other words, everything happens now inside a computer. The interactor receives output and gives input. The computer-controlled characters are now the actors on the stage. The designer themselves isn't taking part in the instance. Instead, the designer is represented by a proxy, a drama manager, which is a piece of software that runs a script. Just like the human drama manager in the previous example, the software-based drama manager observes the situation, the characters, and the interactor. It tries to steer the situation to follow the script by directing the characters. Depending on how loose or tight the script is, it has more or less leeway to do this. A loose script could include, for example, certain key points, like in the dramatic arc, where these key points could be an exciting force, counteraction, and final suspense. A tight script would limit the freedom more and keep things more under control. In the extreme case, there would be only one way how the events can unfold, which would reduce the instance to a linear story. The drama manager has to be able to control the situation, and there are many ways how it can do this. Crawford lists 5 ways how the drama manager can influence the story world. The most common one is environmental manipulation. The idea is to control the route that the interactor takes in the story world. One classical example is the lock key structure, where the interactor first faces a lock. This prompts the interactor to search the surroundings for a solution. By forcing the interactor to take a new route, they can meet, for example, a new character who could turn out to be important for the overall story. Once the interactor finds the key, they can return back to the original path, open the lock, and continue. Apart from guiding the interactor, environmental manipulation can be used to prevent the interactor from getting out of the limits of the story. Crawford calls the second type of influence goal injection. In this case, a character's goals are adjusted so that they lead the interactor to the intended direction. Imagine that the drama manager's intention is to lead the interactor to a pizzeria where the story continues. Now the character playing the interactor's friend could have a new goal of getting to the pizzeria and taking the interactor along. As these injected goals might come out of a sudden and look unmotivated, they can easily break the believability of the character. The character may even appear to be out of a sudden possessed or remotely controlled by some outside force, which is actually the case. Crawford's third type, shifting personality, is a subtle way to use a character. This time, there's no crude injection of a goal, but the drama manager taps into the character's personality instead. By shifting it, the character's goals also get updated. This is less discernible as it seems to stem more naturally from the character's traits and needs. For example, instead of injecting the goal to go to a pizzeria, the character's personality could be changed to prefer Italian food. Once the character gets hungry, it naturally proposes the interactor a visit to a nearby pizzeria. The fourth idea of Crawford's list is to use plot points to develop the story. Plot points act like triggers that launch events or open or close possibilities for the interactor. For example, to meet a boss character who gives information where to go next, the interactor has to fulfill a given task to trigger the entrance of the boss. Once the task is fulfilled, the interactor is allowed to meet the boss and gets to know the next part of the story. The last and the crudest way for the drama manager to influence the interactor is dropping the fourth wall. In this case, the suspension of disbelief is knowingly disrupted to instruct the interactor. For example, the designer themselves or their avatar can approach the interactor and give information that isn't normally accessible inside the story world. Another variation of dropping the fourth wall is that a character talks directly to the viewer, such as Woody Allen's movie Annie Hall or the television series Fleabag. However, this storytelling device is rarely used, and even then mainly for a comical effect. Let's summarize the pros and cons of the author-centric approach. Listing the benefits, the author-centric approach is intuitively easy to understand. The jump from conventional storytelling isn't too big for someone with a background in linear scriptwriting. This is because the author-centric approach supports coherent narrative structures. The designer can, for instance, focus on short linear sequences and few alternative paths. All this means that it's relatively easy to embed dramatic interest in the story world. The designer can create a narrative where suspense increases or mysteries unfold in a premeditated fashion. Listing the drawbacks of the author-centric approach, one can't omit the fact that the characters' actions aren't always believable. If a drama manager injects goals to the character or shift their personalities, their behavior can even break the interactor's suspension of disbelief and break the illusion of being immersed in a story world. The tighter the drama manager's control on the plot, the more limited is the range of actions available to the interactor. We can compare this to the setup of the movie Stranger Than Fiction, where the protagonist realizes that his life is happening in a fictional novel with a voiceover telling what he will do next. When he refuses to obey the voiceover, the world tries to force him to follow the intended story. This also demonstrates a weak spot when trying to solve the narrative paradox, because the protagonist's free will gets severely limited over the course of the film, making his world appear to be a very strange place indeed. Even more serious drawback is the questions relating to the software design and implementation of the drama manager. Obviously, it should provide a formalized way for the designer to create the story world and the script that the drama manager tries to then follow. Even bigger problem would be how the drama manager can infer what is the current dramatic situation. For a human drama manager, this wouldn't be difficult, but creating an artificial intelligence to this seems, to say the least, a highly challenging problem. These problems were partly the reason that motivated the research on the character-centric approach. More on that in the next video. See you there.